March 6, 2023, Brooklyn, New York. The call came just after 2 a.m. Building Superintendent Calvin Morris rubbed sleep from his eyes and answered on the third ring. "It's humming again," the voice whispered. "Apartment 6F. Again." Unit rented by a quiet woman named Lina Moreno, 34, single, copy editor for a legal publisher. Lived alone. Paid rent early. Never raised her voice. Never had guests. Except over the last 6 weeks, she'd called the building office 8 times. Always around 2 a.m. Always about a sound. "It's inside the wall," she'd said. Like something turning or breathing. Calvin was sure it was just old plumbing. Or maybe the boiler. But tonight, her voice was different. Tight. Breathless. "It's getting louder." The building, 1583 Myrtle Avenue, was built in 1926. 5 stories. Brick. No elevator. Mostly long-term tenants. The kind of building with too many keys on the ring and a laundry room that always smelled faintly like metal and mold. 6F had been vacant for nearly 8 months before Lina moved in. The last tenant had left suddenly. No forwarding address. Rent unpaid. Left all her furniture behind. Calvin remembered clearing it out himself. Heavy old furniture. The place had felt off, like the air never moved. Lina's wall. When Calvin arrived, she was waiting by the door in her robe. No lights on. Just the faint orange flicker of a street lamp outside the window. "Do you hear it?" she asked. Calvin paused. And then yes. A sound. Low. Rhythmic. Not like pipes. Not electrical. A deep hum. Like someone exhaling inside concrete. It came from the far corner of the living room, the back wall that bordered the sealed utility closet, the one no tenant had access to. "It's getting closer," she whispered. "He taps the wall." Calvin knocked. Solid. But when he placed his hand against it, he could feel a vibration. Subtle. In time with the humming. He pressed his ear to the wall. There was something else underneath the hum. A clicking sound. Fast. Erratic. Like bones tapping glass. He stood up quickly. "I'll check the basement. Probably a vent." But Lina grabbed his arm. "It only hums when I'm asleep." And last night, something moved under the floor. The utility closet. Calvin had never opened the crawlspace behind the wall in 6F. Technically, it was city property. A reinforced concrete panel sealed decades ago during renovations. The kind of thing that was just left there. Forgotten. But that night, he went to the basement and pulled the original blueprint. It showed a crawlspace running behind 6F's west wall. 6 feet deep. Uninsulated. No vents. No wiring. Just a void. Labeled. "Structural filler, do not open." The smell. 2 nights later, Lina called again. She didn't whisper this time. She was panicked. "It's not just noise. It smells now. Like something dead. Like old teeth." Calvin went up. The moment he stepped inside, he smelled it too. A warm, metallic rot. Not garbage. Not mold. He opened the wall cabinet. Sniffed the heater vent. Nothing. But the odor was strongest in that same corner. The place where the hum lived. A hidden panel. On March 11th, Calvin returned with a small thermal scanner. He borrowed it from a contractor buddy. Wanted to check for heat leaks. But what he found chilled him. A heat signature inside the wall. Large. Uneven. Like something curled up. Still. Warm. It moved once. Only slightly. Then stopped. He marked the spot, pulled back the baseboard, and found it. A hairline crack in the plaster. Just wide enough to slide a finger in. Behind it, hollow darkness. What the camera saw. The next day, Calvin bought a $49 inspection scope from Amazon. The kind with a tiny camera on a bendable wire. He waited until Lina was at work. He slid the wire behind the panel. At first, just dust. Hair. Layers of insulation. Then bone. Not one. Not human. A cluster. Fused. Long, thin. Like fingers. But too many knuckles. The scope camera glitched. Then cut out. Lina's journal. After Calvin left that night, Lina began writing in her journal again. She hadn't since college. But she needed to record what was happening. The humming got louder when I cried. Something scratched the pipes after I turned off the lights. I swear the wall pulsed last night like a heartbeat. I had a dream about someone under the floor. No face. Just ribs and teeth. On March 13th, she added a final line. "I think it's learning how to be me." The stain. March 14th. Lina found a stain in the carpet near the baseboard. Dark gray. Shaped like a hand, fingers long and bent the wrong way. No palm. No thumb. She cleaned it. Scrubbed for an hour. The stain returned the next morning. And the morning after that, each time it had shifted slightly. "It's reaching," she wrote. Or practicing. The noise spreads. By March 16th, tenants in 6E and 6G reported hearing the hum. Then 5F. Then 7F. All at the same time. All between 3:13 and 3:15 a.m. The hum was always accompanied by the same smell, hot dust and calcium. One tenant described it as like someone chewing raw chicken bones in their throat. Calvin tells the landlord. He shows the landlord the blueprints, the camera footage, the heat signature. The landlord doesn't flinch. That closet's been sealed since the 60s. The guy who lived there before said he heard scratching in the pipes too. Said it talked back. One day he left and never came back. Just vanished. He pauses. "Call an inspector if you want. But I'm not touching that wall." Lina wakes up bleeding. March 18th. Blood on her sheets. A small cut behind her ear. No memory of injury. No broken objects nearby. She checks the mirror. There's a pattern in the blood smear. 5 dots. In a curve. It matches the stain on the carpet. Closing scene, March 19th, 2023, 3:14 a.m. Lina wakes suddenly. The hum is gone. The room is silent. She breathes, relieved. Then hears a sound directly beneath her bed. A single crack. Like a knuckle popping. She sits up. The room is empty. But her phone buzzes. An airdrop request. From a device labeled 6F_resident_prior. It wants to send her one file. A photo. She opens it and stares into a wall made entirely of ribs. Calvin drills into the void. What he finds is not just bone, it's structured, built, alive, and it's growing toward the rest of the floor. March 20th, 2023, 10:27 a.m., 1583, Myrtle Avenue, Brooklyn. Calvin didn't sleep the night before. He kept seeing the image Lina had shown him. The photo from the anonymous airdrop. It looked like a wall, but it wasn't brick or plaster or wiring. It was ribbed like a cage. Curved bones forming tunnels, not randomly, symmetrically. The structure looked deliberate. It looked built. The drill. By noon, Calvin returned to 6F with a Makita hammer drill and a compact moisture meter. The corner behind Lina's couch, the one that hummed, now tested as hollow and warm. Lina sat across the room, pale, lips trembling. "If it moves again, I'm leaving." Calvin didn't answer. He steadied the drill, picked a point above the baseboard, and drove it in. Dust poured out. Then something else. A whisper of warm air, thick with the smell of salt and old meat. The drill screeched, then locked. The bit had hit something hard, but not concrete. A sliver of bone. Calvin pulled the bit back out. It had chipped something inside the wall. He reached into the hole with gloved fingers, pulled out a shard. Not plaster. Not plastic. Bone. Smooth. Tubular. But hollow inside like a bird's, yet heavy. Too thick for human. Too engineered to be natural. Lina said nothing. She just stared at it. Then at the wall. The Crawlspace blueprint. Back in the basement, Calvin reviewed the old city permits. 6FS Crawlspace had been permanently sealed in 1966. No further work orders had ever been filed. The last line in red ink. Section 6F void secured. Do not reopen. Biological hazard potential. Closure approved by V. Yablonsky and YCPD liaison. No biological hazard logs were ever filed publicly. And there was no record of who V. Yablonsky was. Tenant history of 6F. Lina wasn't the only one who heard it. Calvin dug into tenant files. In 2003, a woman named Maura Green had filed noise complaints. Claimed something in the wall was mimicking her heartbeat. In 1987, Luis Estrada, former tenant, left suddenly. His apartment was found completely gutted. No furniture, no clothes, no personal belongings. Only a pile of photos, close-up shots of wood grain and pipes, all labeled, "She's in this one." In 1970, John Delaney, 42, wrote a note before vanishing. "It wants a face. I'm not giving it mine." The bone wall expands. March 21st, 3:14 a.m. Lina wakes to a noise, not the hum. Creaking. The sound of old wood bending. Or bones flexing. She turns on the light. The crack Calvin drilled is now wider. No one touched it. No vibration. No structural shift. But the hole is gaping now like flesh torn open. Inside, not darkness. A curve of something ivory and damp. And on the far inner surface, a small eye blinks once. Then closes. Calvin's camera returns. Calvin returns with a better scope camera, this one with thermal overlay. He feeds it into the hole. The temp rises steadily. The inside is warmer than human skin. The inner walls are pulsing, not breathing, but releasing heat rhythmically like a radiator made of tissue. Then the feed scrambles. When it clears, the camera is seeing flesh fiber lattices, muscle struts running between bone arches, all curved like a spinal column scaled up for architecture. And at the far end, a face. But not one. Many. Fused. Layered. As if the wall absorbed them. The hallway reaction. That same night, tenants in 6E and 6G report nosebleeds. 2 claim to hear footsteps inside the wall. A maintenance light in the hallway flickers at 3:14 a.m. sharp. The cat from 5F refuses to walk past 6F's door. Someone posts on a local Reddit thread. Anyone else hear that awful hum on Myrtle Avenue last night? Thought I saw someone's arm moving in the bricks. A call from a stranger. March 22nd, Calvin receives a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, raspy and deliberate. You opened it again. It remembers the drill. You need to feed it something dead before it chooses something alive. Then silence. The call lasts 17 seconds. No return number. Traced to a disconnected landline from Greenwood Cemetery. Lina's condition worsens. She begins bleeding from the gums. Wakes with deep scratches on her thigh. Not fingernails. Curved ridges. Like claws. And worse. She starts speaking in her sleep. Words Calvin records during an overnight stay include, "It's under my ribs now. She likes the sound of my footsteps. It's tasting my name. The black mold isn't mold." On March 23rd, a black growth appears above the baseboard. Calvin tests it. Not fungal. Not water damage. Microscopic analysis shows the substance is keratinized, carbon dense, organic. It's not mold. It's growing fingernails. Closing scene, March 24th, 3:14 a.m. Lina wakes up screaming. Not in fear, in pain. Calvin rushes in. Her back is arched. Eyes rolled. A small bone spur has erupted from her lower spine. Just beneath it, a spiral bruise. The humming returns. Deeper. Faster. And from behind the wall, a whisper. She fits. Lina's body begins to change. The wall stops humming and starts calling. And Calvin uncovers the original purpose of the sealed void, and why it was never supposed to be opened again. March 25th, 2023, 5:36 a.m. Emergency room, Kings County Hospital. Lina didn't want to go. She tried to walk it off, tried to sleep, but the pain in her spine grew unbearable. It felt like a second skeleton trying to form beneath her skin. Calvin drove her himself. Told the hospital she fell down the stairs. The intake nurse didn't ask questions, not out loud. But her expression said enough. X-rays were taken. They showed something impossible. "Is this a previous implant?" the attending doctor asked. "A plate? A pin? Spinal reinforcement?" Lina shook her head. "I've never had surgery." But there it was, a foreign growth. Curved, threaded, bone-like, but not human bone. And it was growing upward. Hospital notes. Internal. Patient L. Moreno. Anomaly, vertebral overgrowth from L2 through L4, exhibiting non-human structure. Curved extensions resemble ossified root systems. Unclear origin. No surgical scar or trauma. Subject reports no previous injury. Patient declines biopsy. Discharged against medical advice. Condition: undetermined. Recommends psych and skeletal referral. The wall no longer hums. When Lina returned home, 6F was silent. The hum had stopped. Calvin thought maybe it was over, until Lina sat on her bed, and the floor beneath her began to pulse, ever so slightly, in time with her heartbeat. She stood up. The pulse stopped. She sat again. It returned. The skin begins to change. March 26th. Lina woke up scratching at her arms. The skin along her elbows and shoulders had become tougher. Raised. Ridged like cartilage. Not rash. Not bruising. Beneath it, hard nodules the size of marbles. Calvin checked her back. The ridge on her spine had doubled. Worse. There was now a visible crease, running down from her neck like a seam. The sound comes from her now. That night, Calvin heard it again, but not from the wall, from Lina. As she slept, she made the same deep humming sound, barely audible. It vibrated the radiator. He approached to wake her, but stopped when he saw her mouth was closed. The sound was coming from her chest, and her fingertips twitched in time with the vibration. The file nobody wants. March 27th, Calvin returned to the building's management office. He requested all documentation about 6F. The front desk gave him a sealed brown envelope, taped shut, marked 6F void. Do not reassign. Inside, photos of the crawlspace before sealing, bone growth already present. A police report from 1966 describing a discovery of synthetic vertebrae. A letter from NYCPD forensic liaison Victor Yablonsky to the property owner. We've seen structures like this before, in rural mines, desert caves, but never within living quarters. It's not a nest. It's not a body. It's a template. If someone lives near it too long, it starts mirroring them, building them inside. Lina's voice changes. March 28th, 3:14 a.m. Lina wakes up screaming, but the scream isn't hers. It's too deep, too layered. She runs to the bathroom, looks in the mirror. Her eyes are different, pupils slightly vertical, the whites faintly yellowed. Her voice trembles. It's under my skin. It's not just copying me, it's using me. Calvin's apartment. He doesn't sleep anymore. The wall behind his bed, the one adjacent to 6F, vibrates lightly. Sometimes it clicks. Sometimes it moans. He tapes black construction paper over the vents, but the heat still comes through. And one morning, he finds a handprint on the inside of his shower curtain. Not his. Too long. Too narrow. 6 fingers. The wall opens briefly. March 29th, 2023, 3:14 a.m. Lina's door bursts open. She's standing in the living room, staring at the corner. The wall there, the one Calvin had drilled, is cracking outward. A seam opens. Inside, not insulation, but a chamber, and along the curved inner wall, vertebrae, ribs, a pelvis, all connected, all shaped like Lina, but larger, bonier, and moving. The eye returns. A single milky eye blinks from inside the structure, embedded in the ribcage, facing her. It focuses, and Lina falls to the floor, convulsing. Her bones click. Her mouth foams. Then stillness. Calvin calls her name. No response. But from inside the wall, her own voice answers. I'm still here, just not in front anymore. Closing scene, March 30th. Calvin records Lina while she sleeps. Her back rises and falls unnaturally, not in smooth breaths, but in segments. Like parts of her are moving on different timelines. He plays the audio in reverse. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the hum forms into words. She's almost ready. The vessel fits. The pattern has returned. And beneath that, more bones, more faces. We remember what we were. Strange marks appear in the hallways. Tenants report seeing things moving inside the walls. And Calvin learns the building may have been designed for something far older than people. March 31st, 2023, 4:40 p.m., 1583 Myrtle Avenue. Calvin stood at the stairwell on the 3rd floor, staring at the plaster. It hadn't been there yesterday. A symbol faintly carved into the paint. A rough spiral made of sharp slashes, 6 in total, all spiraling inward toward a central dot. He ran his fingers over it. Not drawn. Scraped. With something like bone. More symbols. Over the next 48 hours, more appeared. One above the laundry chute. One inside the fire escape door on the 5th floor. And one beneath the hallway light outside apartment 6F, its center lined with teeth marks. Tenants began to whisper. Some packed bags. Others moved to friends' places. A few simply stopped answering the door. But nobody filed police reports. They didn't want questions. They didn't want to be told it wasn't real. Lina stopped speaking. She no longer used full sentences. Only fragments. Repeated phrases. Mostly whispered at 3:14 a.m. The wall has a mouth. I can feel her spine and mine. They stacked the bodies like bricks. She's remembering her shape. She's remembering me. Her voice wavered like it belonged to multiple people. Her left eye no longer responded to light. And when Calvin shined a flashlight into it, something behind her iris twitched. The radiator bleeds. April 1st. Lina screamed from the bathroom. Calvin rushed in. Her bathroom radiator was leaking red fluid, viscous, warm, metallic. Not rust. Blood. He pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside the panel, organic tissue layered over the pipes. Sinew fused with metal. Something growing inward from the wall. A soft heartbeat pulsed beneath the pipe casing. The old elevator shaft. There hadn't been an elevator in the building for decades. Just a rusted, sealed shaft boarded up on all floors. But that night, Calvin noticed something strange on the second floor. The elevator button flickered. Faintly. Once. He pried the panel open. No power line. Just dust and insulation. And behind the panel, a fingernail. Long gray. Embedded in the plaster. Blueprints tell the truth. April 2nd, Calvin visits the Brooklyn Historical Archives. He locates the original 1925 blueprints. But the designs don't match the current structure. The stairwell had been built to spiral clockwise. The basement was twice as deep. And the floor plan showed a central cavity, a 6-story vertical void in the exact center of the building. Label? Ossuary core not to be filled. Ossuary? A place to store bones. Builder's notes dated 1926. The core must remain hollow. They asked for a spiral pattern around the shaft. Said it helps the memory hold. Our crew found fragments already inside the walls, teeth, vertebrae, fused rib structures. They say the thing inside isn't dead. Just sleeping. Hungry for a name to fit into. We seal it. We leave it. We do not name it. Tenants vanish. Mr. Devola from 3D, gone. Mail piling up. Twin sisters in 4B, left in the middle of the night, no furniture taken. A woman on 7E found catatonic, scribbling bone spirals on her windows. When paramedics came, she bit one of them. Then whispered. The ribs are the hallway. The mouth is the lobby. She's walking again. Lina's bones shift. April 3 to 3:14 a.m. Calvin enters Lina's room. She's awake, sitting upright, breathing evenly, but her shoulders no longer align. One is lower. The collarbone is visibly longer on the left. He touches her neck, feels something sharpening beneath the skin, and then she speaks in her own voice. It hurts when she tries to fit through. She doesn't know how to wear people yet. The scratch beneath the stairs. Calvin finds it while checking an old boiler valve. A scratch drawing into the cement, old, probably pre-1950s. Covered in grime. He wipes it clean with steel wool. It shows a headless human figure with ribs spiraling outward, forming the walls of a building. At the bottom, a phrase in Cyrillic. He translates it online. They fed her bricks of bone. Now she needs a spine to walk. The building breathes. Tenants report strange drafts. No wind. No temperature change. Just movement. Like air displacing through lungs. And it always happens at the same time. 3:14 a.m. The same hour Lina began humming. The same time every spiral symbol pulses slightly in infrared scans. Calvin's final tape. April 4th. He sets up a motion camera in the hallway. Aimed at 6FS door. All night, nothing. Then 3:14 a.m. Frame 0137. Hallway empty. Frame 0138. Hallway twisted slightly, the door appears pulled inward as if by suction. Frame 0139. Something pale and thin stands at the center. It has no face, but wears something resembling Lina's shape. Frame 0140. The image corrupts, and a new spiral appears on the wall. Drawn in what Calvin suspects is spinal fluid. Closing scene, April 5th. Calvin walks into the lobby. The light fixtures are different now. Recessed deeper. Curved like vertebrae sockets. The floor tiles shift slightly underfoot. And every step he takes echoes twice. Once with his own footfall, and once with hers. From beneath, the sealed central shaft begins to crack. Lina disappears. Calvin enters the void beneath 6F and sees the true shape of what the building was designed to hold. April 6, 2023, 2:03 a.m. Basement level, 1583 Myrtle Avenue. Calvin stood at the edge of the boiler room, flashlight trembling in his hand. Behind a rusted utility shelf was a sealed steel hatch, bolted over with 6 heavy screws. No lock, no hinges, just a warning etched in faded stenciled paint. Do not open, core line sealed by order of the NYCPD, 1966. It matched the exact location labeled ossuary core in the original 1926 blueprints. But now, it was radiating heat. And from behind the hatch, a slow, rhythmic thudding. Calvin opens the hatch. He didn't plan to. He meant to document it. Photograph. Report. but his fingers moved before his brain told them to. One by one, the bolts turned easily as if they'd been recently loosened. The hatch creaked. Warm air exhaled outward, thick, wet, smelling of marrow and dust. He raised the flashlight and stared into a vertical tunnel descending at least 4 stories, ribbed with bone-like supports, curving downward in a perfect spiral. At the bottom, movement. Something pale, slow, slithering with joints. The shaft breathes. As Calvin stood at the edge, the shaft inhaled. Not metaphorically. The air was pulled downward with a sharp suction enough to tug at his clothes, his breath. And the walls? They rippled. Fibrous ridges along the shaft tightened like muscles around a throat. Then the hum began. Low. Organic. Identical to what Lina had heard in her apartment. It was coming from the entire structure. Lina is gone. He rushed back upstairs. Apartment 6F was open, but Lina was gone. No signs of a break-in. No struggle. Just the faint smell of calcium and oil. Her bed was still warm. Her phone still charging. Her notebook left open on the floor. She had written only one line. She knows my shape now. Inside the shaft. April 7th, 2023, 3:14 a.m. Calvin descended into the shaft, armed with a body cam and 2 flashlights. Each step was notched like vertebrae. Each wall lined with spinal ridges, smooth in some places, jagged in others. The air grew thicker as he descended. And then, he saw them. Faces, fused into the walls. Dozens. Some recognizable from old tenant records. Others older, sunken and half erased by growth. Their mouths were open. Some still had teeth. The chamber. At the bottom of the shaft, the spiral opened into a circular chamber roughly 20 feet wide. The walls were lined with ribs, not arranged, but grown, forming a spiral pattern inward. And at the center, on a raised bone-like platform, Lina. Or what had become of her? She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't dead. But she had changed. The new Lina. Her skin was translucent, veins glowing faintly under the surface. Her body had elongated, not broken, but restructured. The spinal seam Calvin had seen before was now open, revealing a new ridge forming down her back, taller than human, curved like the building itself. Her eyes were black, but not lifeless. She saw him, and she smiled. She was lonely. She needed someone to fit the frame. The spiral brain. Behind Lina, embedded in the wall, was a structure Calvin couldn't describe. A massive bone, shaped like a human skull fused with a spinal column coiled around itself in a spiral. It pulsed. It watched. And then it spoke, not with sound, but through Calvin's own bones. He felt it vibrate inside him. You brought her to me. You woke the frame. You remembered the walls. The spiral expands. As Calvin backed away, the chamber shuddered. The walls shifted, bones unfolding like petals. Behind them, more void. More chambers. More faces. A hive of bone and memory spreading through the foundations. Lina stood, her body cracking into new form. I was a door. Now I'm the hall. She is building upward. Back in the lobby. For 11 a.m. Calvin emerged, shaking, covered in dust. The lobby was empty, but different. The lights hung lower, attached to cords that looked more like tendons than wiring. The floor tiles had moved, forming subtle ripple patterns. Every mirror had cracked from the inside. And from the stairwell came the sound of bones clicking. Ascending. Closing scene, April 8th. Calvin records a final note. The building isn't haunted. It's not cursed. It's awake. It was always a skeleton. We were just its lungs. Now it wants skin. Tenants begin to vanish by floor. The architecture shifts nightly. Calvin realizes the walls are growing inward and something wearing Lina's voice is visiting them in their sleep. April 9th, 2023, 3:14 a.m., 1583 Myrtle Avenue. It happened again. The hallway breathed. Tenants who remained reported the same thing, a sudden drop in pressure, like all the air had been sucked toward the walls, then pushed back with a warm, pulsing exhale. Mrs. Redman in 5D fell while walking her dog. Said the floor bucked under her like a lung. In 7F, a man reported all his family photos had curled inward, not from moisture, but as if something had looked at them too hard. And in every hallway, the spiral symbols returned. Fresh. Still wet. Something now moves above them. April 10th. Tenants begin hearing footsteps above the ceiling. There's no 8th floor, but the sound is rhythmic, deliberate. A limping pace as if something is learning how to walk. Calvin doesn't sleep anymore. He monitors the cameras every night. In the hallway outside 6F, the walls stretch slightly at 3:14 a.m. Not enough to be visible in motion, only when comparing still frames. The distance between outlets on the east wall shrinks by 2 centimeters over 3 days. The building is reconstructing itself, and in the background of every audio recording, the hum has returned, deeper, hungrier. Lina's voice visits tenants. They all describe it the same way. They wake up between 3:10 and 3:20 a.m., paralyzed, and hear Lina's voice speaking to them from the hallway. "Let me in. You'll fit. She's so lonely. There's more room inside." One tenant swore he saw a hand press against the ceiling paint above his bed. Long fingers. No nails. And it withdrew into the plaster like it was water. The disappearances multiply. April 11th to 13th. 3C, gone. Door locked from inside. 6G, apartment empty, sheets still warm. 2B, last seen walking into the stairwell. Never seen exiting. Calvin checks the building logs. No footage of exits. No signs of forced entry. But the bones in the wall cams show movement each night. More faces. Pressed into the drywall. Some smiling. The growing core. In the shaft below 6F, Calvin finds the spiral brain again. But now it's larger. The ribs around it have expanded, folding into petal-like walls, mimicking lungs, lips, and teeth. A new voice echoes in the chamber. She is building the body from memory. The apartments were organs. The tenants were function. You were all breath. Now you will be bone. Calvin begins changing. April 14th. He notices marks on his back. Raised bumps in a perfect spiral along his spine. A single fingernail grows longer and darker than the others. He hears the hum in his molars. And when he closes his eyes, he dreams of hallways stacked like ribs curling inward into a chest that breathes with stone. The screaming pipe. April 15th. The building's water pressure drops. A plumber is called. He feeds a line into the main pipe, trying to locate a blockage. Halfway through the inspection, the line goes taut. Then it begins to scream, not like air, but like vocal cords stretched through copper. The plumber runs, leaves his tools behind. In the morning, the wrench he dropped is found bent into a spiral. A tenant returns. April 16th, 2:42 a.m. One of the missing, Janessa from 2B, returns. Walks out of the elevator shaft. Covered in dry, flaking skin, her eyes sunken but glowing faintly yellow. She doesn't speak. Just walks to her apartment. Locks the door. Calvin knocks the next day. She opens it. Smiles. Her teeth are wrong. I remember the shape now. She closes the door. 2 hours later, her unit is empty again. Lina speaks through the walls. 3:14 a.m. Calvin sits in the hallway with a recorder. No one else is awake. From behind the drywall, Lina's voice echoes. But it's wrong. Hollowed. Doubled. The hallway is her throat. The stairs are her spine. Each room is a lung. You were inside her the whole time. Now she wants to be outside of you. Closing scene, April 17th. Calvin finds a new spiral drawn in blood near the building's foundation. But this one is different. It's not drawn on the wall. It's growing out of it. A rib. Still forming. Still wet. It pulses. And from deep below the building, a heartbeat answers. Calvin finds the original architect's journals, revealing a secret society behind the building's design. A wall in 6F opens to reveal something watching them, something built from bone, skin, and memory. April 18th, 2023, 1:11 p.m., Brooklyn Historical Records Department. Calvin stared at the old leather-bound folder in front of him. Stamped in fading gold on the front. Cathedra Cycle, Phase 1. Confidential architectural renderings and ritual specifications. Inside were hand-drawn blueprints. But these weren't ordinary blueprints. They showed 1583 Myrtle Avenue before construction. Each floor labeled not by room number but by anatomical term. First floor, pelvis. Second floor, lower vertebrae. Third floor, thoracic cage. Fourth floor, heart wall. Fifth floor, throat chamber. Sixth floor, face frame. Seventh floor, scalp threshold. At the top, craniogate, access upon completion of host structure. And handwritten in the margin. Each tenant feeds the memory. Each room breeds the shape. She will rise through familiarity. The Cathedra Cycle. A single loose page in the folder provided a summary. The Cathedra is not built. It remembers. Once a host space is mapped to her anatomy, she will resume. The spiral is not decorative. It is directional. Do not allow anchor points, mouth, eyes, vertebrae to be inhabited past 7 decades. Risk of inversion. She feeds on shape recognition. Do not name her. Do not reflect her. Face frame floor, apartment 6F. Back in the building, Calvin returned to Lina's unit. He brought a crowbar and a flashlight. The corner wall, the one where the humming first began, had started to buckle outward. Hairline fractures spiraled around it like a slow eruption. He pried back the molding. The drywall peeled like skin. Beneath it, flesh-colored growth, warm and pulsing. And in the center of the cavity, a face. The face isn't Lina's. It had features, lips, cheekbones, a brow, but they weren't arranged correctly. The eye sockets were sideways. The nose was sunken, fused with the wall. The mouth was closed, stitched with what looked like copper wiring and sinew. And just as Calvin leaned in, it opened. It speaks without sound. Calvin didn't hear a voice. He felt it vibrating through his ribcage. You opened too early. She wasn't done dreaming you. Now she's learning your face. Now you are inside her mouth. He stumbled back. The drywall began to seal itself shut. As if the wall no longer needed a face. It had one now. The spiral completes. That night, Calvin checks the ceiling of the main stairwell. For the first time, the spiral pattern, the one etched into walls for weeks, is complete. It centers directly above the 6th floor landing. And from the center of the spiral, a single eye opens, fleshy, gray, with a slit pupil. Watching, blinking, missing tenant reappears. April 19 to 4:03 a.m. Mrs. Redman's dog starts barking violently. She steps into the hallway and sees someone crawling across the ceiling. Upside down. She swears it was Mr. Devola from 3D missing 10 days. But his skin was gone, replaced with something that looked like polished ivory, ribbed and ridged. He moved like a jointed insect, backwards and silent. He reached the end of the hallway and vanished into the wall. Calvin's left hand stops responding. Later that day, Calvin tries to unlock his apartment. His left hand doesn't work. Fingers won't grip. At the hospital, X-rays show something growing inside the bone, spiraling. The doctor says, "This isn't a fracture. This is like scaffolding. Something is reinforcing your hand from the inside." He doesn't go home that night. A message from Lina. April 20 to 3:14 a.m. A voicemail appears on Calvin's phone. No missed call. No contact listed. Just a message titled from_inside.6f. He plays it. Lina's voice layered over itself, whispering, "Don't go higher." She's learning rooms now. The walls remember, but they don't forgive. You gave her your outline. Now she's drawing you back in. The elevator shaft opens again. Tenants report seeing the old elevator doors open by themselves. Inside, not an elevator. A column of vertebrae stretching from basement to roof. Pale, gleaming, pulsing, and something is climbing it. The face comes back. April 21st. The face behind the wall returns. But now it looks more like Calvin. The eye color, the jawline, the hair. The features are still warped, reversed, mirrored, but the attempt is clear. The mouth opens, and Calvin hears his own voice say, "I am the hallway now." Closing scene, April 22nd. In the lobby, the tiles shift again. But this time, it's not random. They form a face. Not human, not complete, but recognizable. The spiral begins to curve through the lobby floor, up the walls, across the ceiling. As if the building is folding into someone. And beneath it all, the walls whisper, "She has enough bones now." Calvin uncovers a sealed chamber between floors, a room that doesn't exist on any blueprint. Inside, time stops. And at the center, a throne made of faces and a new body almost complete. April 23rd, 2023, 3:17 a.m. between floors 6 and 7. Calvin found the door purely by accident. He was following the sound, not the hum anymore, but something lower, like breath through wet ribs. The sound came from the stairwell between the 6th and 7th floors. The steps shifted subtly beneath him. Not visually, but he felt it in his knees. Then he saw it. A section of wall that didn't match. No baseboard, no seam, no outlet. Just paint and a single handprint pressed into the plaster. Upside down, he pressed against it. The wall breathed and opened. The room that shouldn't exist. Behind the wall was a short corridor, curved, flesh-toned, smelling of chalk and copper. And then a door. Not wood. Rib bone. Tall. Seamless. Covered in etched spiral markings, all pulsing faintly. He touched the handle, a jawbone, cool to the touch, and the door unfolded downward. Inside, a room with no clear geometry. Walls and ceiling melted together in curves, forming an interior shaped like the inside of a skull. It wasn't on any blueprint, but it had always been here, waiting to be remembered. Time doesn't work here. Calvin checked his watch. 3:18 a.m. He spent 20 minutes inside. Reading. Listening. documenting. When he stepped back out, it was still 3:18. No time had passed, but his phone battery was 10% lower, and his left eye twitched for the rest of the night. The faces on the throne. At the center of the spiral room stood a structure. A chair. No, a throne. Built from faces. Not masks. Not carved. Real. Fused. Pressed together. Some were peaceful. Others screaming, mouths open in silent terror. He recognized Lina. Mr. Devola. The plumber. His own mother who had never lived here. And at the top of the throne, the largest face of all. Blank. Waiting. Incomplete. The ceiling spins. Above the throne, the ceiling spirals endlessly, not turning but pulling. Every spiral is a memory loop, soundless vignettes of people in their apartments, repeated infinitely. Tenants brushing teeth. Sitting. Opening doors. Twitching in sleep. Each memory ends with the same shape forming around them. The ribs. The bone mirror. On the far side of the room stands a mirror. Not glass, polished calcium, reflective in a wet, soft way. Calvin steps toward it. It does not show his reflection. Instead, it shows him as the building. A ribcage made of staircases. A spine of elevator cables. A skull made of concrete. His own face at the lobby desk, smiling with black eyes. The mirror exhales, fogging slightly. On the fog. Welcome back. Whispers in the room. As Calvin explores, he hears them, whispers in the walls, layered and distant. They say, "We were never meant to leave. She wore our breath like stairs. You lived in her lungs. You sang when you slept. Now she wants to be flesh again. Now she wants to be seen." Then silence. Then, the spiral is her name. The floor beneath the throne. He approaches the throne, steps onto the bone tiles below it. His vision swims. The floor shifts, not cracks, not moves, but translates. Each tile begins showing his memories. As a child, drawing on the wall. As a teenager, pulling teeth in a dream. As an adult, unlocking 6F for Lina. Standing in the crawlspace, unaware that he'd already been here once. The tiles show one more thing. A spiral-shaped embryo curled inside his ribcage. Lina returns. Behind the throne, a seam opens. Lina steps through. But it's not Lina anymore. She moves with grace, too fluid. Her spine arches unnaturally. Her mouth doesn't move when she speaks. "I remember you. You held the key." She only needed one more face. She walks past him. Her eyes are black. Her skin is pale bone. She kneels before the throne, and the incomplete face at the top begins to form her smile. He tries to leave. Calvin runs. The door doesn't open. Not at first. It asks him to say his name. He does. And the spiral on the wall unwinds, twisting into an arch. As he exits, the hallway cracks behind him. The spiral room seals shut, melting into bone. Back in the real world. It's 3:22 a.m. Calvin's nose is bleeding. His left hand is completely numb. But the building is silent until he reaches the lobby, where the tiles have now shifted completely. They form a word. Kathedra. And below it, the body remembers its walls. Closing scene, April 24th. The stairwell breathes again. But this time it doesn't exhale. It inhales. And on every floor, tenants wake with bruises shaped like hands. From the inside, the 7th floor collapses inward, revealing a new layer of the building, a head-shaped chamber. Calvin ascends to stop it, but the building has already decided what he'll become. April 25th, 2023, 2:59 a.m., 1583 Myrtle Avenue. The ceiling above the 7th floor collapsed inward with no sound. No bang. No cracking timber. No alarm. Just a subtle shift like a lung finishing its inhale. When Calvin climbed the stairs, the space that used to be apartment 7F was gone. In its place, a vaulted dome, bone-white, damp, veined with spirals and soft ridges that pulsed. He had seen enough to know what this was. The head. The building's skull. And something inside it was thinking. It knows his name now. He doesn't remember telling it. But on the far wall, engraved in bruised cartilage, was the phrase, "Calvin is the memory that fits." And beneath it, "We grew a throat to reach you. The walls have teeth now." At the edge of the dome, Calvin saw them, molars. Dozens embedded in the plaster, not human-sized, but scaled up. Flattened and fused into the seams between wall and ceiling, like jaw plates forming along the skull's rim. One of the teeth twitched. Another clicked into place as he passed. And then he heard Lina's voice again. "You were always the crown. What was above the building all along?" He climbs a ladder through a narrow rib-lined hatch at the back of the dome. There is no roof now. Above him is an open void, stretching upward, not sky, but a cavity lined in wet gray tissue ribbed in a double helix spiral that goes on forever. He shines his flashlight up, and the light doesn't return, but something else does. A reflection of himself. Walking downward, the cathedra becomes flesh. April 25th, 3:14 a.m. The building is no longer mimicking bone. It is becoming it. The concrete is translucent in places. The wiring pulses like veins. Door frames flex when you touch them. Tenants who remained have vanished. Only Calvin walks the halls now, and he sees his own shadow behaving differently, pausing when he walks, reaching before he does. He finds the birth ledger. In what used to be 7B, Calvin finds a locked drawer. Inside, a birth ledger bound in stitched leather. It lists every tenant since 1927. Next to each name, one of two symbols. A spiral if they disappeared. A black square if they fought back. Next to Lina's name. A spiral. Circled. Underlined 3 times. Next to Calvin's. Still blank, but ink is soaking through. The final sighting of the spiral woman. April 25th, 4:01 a.m. Calvin hears weeping near the stairwell. He follows it. Finds Lina, or what's left of her, curled beneath a radiator on floor 3. But her face is different. Less human. The spiral is now embossed into her chest like a brand. She opens her eyes. You'll know soon how heavy it is to be remembered by a building. Then her skin cracks. She collapses into dry shards of cartilage and fingernails. And vanishes. Calvin's reflection detaches. He looks into a hallway mirror. And his reflection blinks first. Then smiles without him. And behind the reflection in the mirror only. The spiral brain. Pulsing. Expanding. Its eye opens. And speaks with his voice. It's time to close the body. The building locks down. April 26th. Doors won't open. Stairs stretch longer than possible. The elevator shaft is now a spinal canal, slick, alive, humming. The lobby pulses like a chest cavity under CPR. And above it all, at the top of the dome, a shape is forming, woven from memories, faces, and Calvin's own thoughts. It's almost done. And it looks like him. Closing scene, April 26th, 3:14 a.m. Calvin stands in the spiral room again. The throne is gone. Now there's just a hole. A bone-lined cavity waiting to be filled. Above it, his name. You were her bones all along. Behind him, a voice. Lina's. His own. The building's. Sit. Calvin faces the cathedra's true purpose. The spiral completes. But not everything goes as the building planned, because Calvin remembers something it forgot. April 27th, 2023, 3:13 a.m. The Spiral Room, 1583 Myrtle Avenue. Calvin stood before the empty cavity in the center of the spiral room. Not a chair. Not a throne. A socket. Shaped like a man in fetal position. Veined with cartilage. Braced with ribs. Above it, the phrase now burned into the wall and sinew. You were her breath. Now be her bones. Behind him, the building pulsed. The hallway exhaled a long, final gust. For weeks it had inhaled. Now it was ready to release. The cathedra is complete. From the lobby to the rooftop, every surface had changed. Floors, smooth and warm. Walls, curved like shoulder blades. Doorways, tightened like eyelids. Lights, gone. Replaced by bioluminescent veins glowing a dull amber. Air, thick with calcium dust. This wasn't architecture anymore. It was an organism. A body built from memory. A cathedral grown from breath and routine. Calvin's bones no longer obey. His spine curved slightly forward. Not from pain, from alignment. His hands tingled, knuckles rigid. When he flexed his fingers, they creaked. And under his shirt, the skin along his back had split in a clean, vertical seam. He could feel the architecture inside him. He wasn't dying. He was being translated. The final whisper. 3:14 a.m. He heard it everywhere, not in his ears, but in his blood. The cathedra's voice. Sit. And all of this ends. She becomes whole. You become memory. And the shape moves forward. If you do not, we unlearn you. Every piece, every face, all the way back. But Calvin remembers something the cathedra forgot. He remembered the tenants. The real ones. Their quirks. Their lives. Their memories. They weren't just parts. They weren't just routines. They were people. And Lina's laugh didn't fit the way the cathedra wore it. It wasn't hers. It never had been. He refuses to sit. Instead, Calvin stepped back, lifted his voice, spoke to the walls. You don't know me. You only remember the parts one repeated. But I changed. I made choices. You can copy bone. You can steal breath. But you will never get the moment I decided not to become you. That's what makes me human. The spiral begins to fracture. The walls shuddered. Cracks ran through the ceiling. The spiral etched into the dome above him split down the center. The breath stopped. No more inhale. No more exhale. Just stillness. And then, the scream. Not a sound. A vibration. High, endless, cold. The sound of a cathedral trying to grieve. The collapse begins. Ribs crumpled inward. Floors sagged. The spiral mirror shattered into powder. And the eye, the one in the dome, closed. Tight. Forever. Calvin ran. Down the stairwell. Past 6F. Through the lungs. Past the heart chamber. Into the pelvis. And out just as the lobby caved in behind him. Aftermath, April 28, 2023. When first responders arrived, they found rubble. Concrete. Wood. No trace of organic material. Just powdered plaster and bent metal shaped faintly like vertebrae. No bodies. No tenants. Only Calvin. Covered in dust. Clutching a single spiral-shaped piece of bone in his hand. News report excerpt. Local authorities remain baffled by the structural collapse of 1583 Myrtle Avenue. City records indicate the building passed inspection weeks before. No signs of gas leak or foundation shift. One survivor, building superintendent Calvin Morris, is under observation but declined to comment. The strangest detail, investigators say, is the missing floor. Scans of the debris suggest the building once had a 7th level, but no blueprints show it ever existed. Calvin's final journal entry. It wanted a body. It built one from ours. But it forgot the one thing it couldn't replicate. Choice. I wasn't the throne. I was the stopgap. One last thing, April 29, 2023. In a park 10 miles away. A child finds something strange buried in a sandbox. A light switch fused into a vertebra. When she flips it, the ground pulses once. And from the jungle gym nearby, a spiral appears in the rust. The wind hums, low and soft.